Hi guys, today I thought I would take the time to answer some of the questions you've left in the comment section on my videos and in my Facebook or Instagram. Kanga is going to help me read out the questions and I will answer them using my own personal experience and opinions. Big disclaimer there. Alright Kanga, take it away.
So the first one is by Faith, and the question she's asking is, did you go to school to be a photographer or are you self-taught?
Thanks for the question, Faith. I'm 100% self-taught. I have never gone for a photography class in my life, but you guys, YouTube really works as a learning resource, and just Googling things you don't know really works. Recently, I also found amazing sites like F-Stoppers and SLR Lounge, and they provide a lot of very good detailed information that you can use in your journey.
The next question is by Tim, and he's asking, how does he know whether he should be a full-time photographer versus focusing on his degree?
That's a really good question, Tim. Hello, Tim. I asked myself that and actually didn't make the decision to be a full-time photographer until probably 4 or 5 years of shooting, because I mostly was never sure I could make a living off of it, and I didn't even know how to start being a photographer. The truth about being a photographer is it's a lot of work. It looks very glamorous from the outside, but you honestly must love photography and be willing to put in the hours that it takes to develop your skill. So only become a full-time photographer if you are very passionate about photography. It's actually okay at the beginning of your photography journey to split your time between doing what your degree was in and getting a full-time job there, and then over the weekends doing photography, just to be sure that if you eventually make the transition into photography, you actually love being a photographer and you understand what it entails to be one. For me, I was always shooting when I was in university. So I chose to go to a university that we had classes 4 days in a week. And the rest of the week, I was taking on small jobs with clients, trying to kind of learn how to be a photographer. And then when I was really sure I understood what it meant to be a photographer and I knew I could actually survive off of it, then I made the transition into being a full-time photographer. However, when I was in university, I had saved up enough to buy my own camera. I did have lights, so I had invested a little bit in being a photographer. But I had never made the bold step of saying, you know what, I'm not going to do anything else to earn money except being a photographer. And now that I've done it, it's not so bad. There's been a lot of learning, but I love what I do. And that's kind of what keeps me going, even on the bad days.
So the next question is by Wanjiro. She's asking, how do I convince my parents whether I can live off of photography and that it's a real job?
How do you convince your parents that you live off photography is one of the most common questions I get, especially from high schoolers. My own opinion on that is that your parents want to make sure that you're going to have a good life, that you're going to be successful, that you can be able to live on your own and pay your bills. So as soon as you're able to demonstrate that as a photographer, I think that gives them some peace. I don't know if you can ever reach a point where they fully understand what a photographer does, especially if they're more old school. So, I mean, be realistic in your expectations for your parents. But also another really helpful thing I found is you can send them links to articles, especially about local photographers who are making a living off of photography. And that will kind of help reduce their fear that you're not choosing a real profession like being a doctor or a lawyer, you know, those things. So that really does help calm their fears.
Is photography a long-lasting career? Mainly because I'm wondering, where am I going to see myself 5 years from now? And can I do this until I'm 60 years old?
So thanks for the question, Atieno. Is photography a long-lasting career? Yes, it can be if you're smart about it. From what I've learned from photographers who are older than me and have very long careers in photography is that you may transition from shooting all the time into something like licensing your images. So you sell people the rights to using your images. Or you can transition into teaching photography or other things that are at the periphery of photography. You don't necessarily have to be shooting all your life. But on the flip side, there are photographers who have shot until their death. So it really depends on you and kind of what you want with your life. But it can be a very long-lasting career. And yes, you can do it until you're 60. I plan to do it until I'm 60. So watch this space.
He's asking, am I as Thandiwe, or rather as you as Thandiwe, comfortable? Is photography your cash cow? And are you going to be able to retire on it?
Thanks for the question, Davy. I was counting down until this question came in. So I think what you're essentially asking is, can I live off photography comfortably? And yes, I actually fully live 100% off photography. It pays my rent, it pays for my fuel, it pays for all my entertainment, it pays for all my food. So yes, I'm comfortable living off of photography. But I need to put in a disclaimer here. It's been 10 years in my journey to get to this point. So don't be discouraged if you as a photographer are out there and you're struggling to establish yourself, because it takes a lot of time and effort. So in the beginning, there were many times where I just wanted to quit being a photographer because I just thought, I'm going to make no money. I can't live off of this. But thankfully, with the help of photography mentors like Mutua and Osborne and other people, I learned the ways you can make money as a photographer, and I managed to implement that into my business, and that's what really made the difference. But it's going to be a long journey, so stay strong. I do plan to retire off of photography, and I think that refers more to being really careful with the money that you do make as a photographer now. Don't spend all of it, put some of it away. Just because you have money in your account doesn't mean it belongs to you. Some of it could belong to your retirement, some could belong to the government as taxes, some could belong to, your employees as salary. So be really careful in how you use your money, and it should be very possible to retire off of photography.
So Henry is asking, is the cash flow and the jobs from photography consistent, or are they seasonal? How does it work?
Hello, Henry. And that's a really good question, and a question I learned the answer to the hard way. When I began photography, I assumed that there's jobs all year round, we make money all year round, and yay, everybody's happy. But that's actually not how it works. What I've realized is in industries like wedding photography, for example, even commercial photography, the work is very seasonal. So anywhere from maybe September or October to the end of the year, there's a lot of work and you can make a lot of money as a photographer. But then January all the way to like March or April, there's very little work. So a skill I've had to learn, and I'm still kind of learning, is that in the months where there's a lot of work, I need to retain some of the money to spread over the more lean months. And I don't know how it is in industries like architectural or interior photography or, event photography. If you're one of those photographers and you do have experience, please let us know below in the comments section. But I suspect work is not there all year round for most photographers.
Is it important to work under a photographer, or can I go on my own from day one?
Working under another photographer is a really helpful thing to do. I did it. So when I was 17, I worked under photographers for a year, 2 different photographers locally. And I had the chance to go out of the country for a couple of months to work under photographers abroad. And at that point, I knew, a fair amount of information about the technical side of shooting. So cameras, lenses, artificial lighting. But what I had no experience in was the business of photography. So working under other photographers helped me understand things like, how do I price my products? How do I negotiate with clients? How do I make a proposal? How do I market myself? All those are things that I could have read off the internet, but I find a lot of times the information on the internet is not really African oriented. So it may be there, but it's hard to apply in a market like Kenya. And working for photographers here at least gave me that more localized information. So yes, it's very possible to start out on your own, but sometimes the journey can be made easier by working under somebody, at least just to learn the business of photography. So some of the people I worked for, I didn't particularly like their shooting style or the type of photography they did, but I did recognize that they had amazing business sense in photography, and that has been really helpful information for me.
When Joy is asking, what are some of the ups and downs of working under someone or another photographer versus going solo?
Thanks for your question, Wanjohi. Having done both, at least to a small degree, I felt that working under another photographer, the disadvantages were, number one, you may not get to shoot what you want. I was working under wedding photographers and event photographers, and all I wanted to do was shoot fashion and beauty. So as much as I was learning, it wasn't as exciting as it would have been if I worked under a fashion or beauty photographer. The second thing is you don't really control your hours. So the times and the hours I worked depended a lot on when the clients wanted us to work or when the event or wedding was. So if you're not a morning person, for example, you may find yourself up on set at 4 a.m. and I know that's not going to be a very happy experience. If you're a morning person, hooray. I think the downs of working for yourself are that You're in charge of everything, which can be really scary. When I began on my own, I knew I could understand photography and the technical side of photography, and I loved it. But I knew very little about business, and that was really scary. I didn't know anything about taxes. I didn't know anything about how do you even begin to find clients. What if a client is upset? What do you even do in a situation like that? And those are things I had to learn for myself. So I think from my experience, my advice would be spend a little time, even if it's just 6 months, under somebody else, just to get a bit of exposure. Because of my own personal story, you can note that in future videos, I'll be answering some of the big questions I had, like how does an invoice look? How do you do taxes? And all those questions you may have. So make sure to watch out for that video.
What are some of the misconceptions surrounding photography as a career?
That is one of my favorite questions. I'm sure all the photographers out there can feel me. I think the number one misconception, and I talked about this a little before, is that we have work all the time. That's not true. Our work is seasonal. The second one is that it's a very glamorous job. I think most people assume as a fashion photographer, I walk on set, pick up my camera and voila. But in actual sense, we are very tired. You're on your hands and knees a lot, getting different angles. You're carrying heavy gear. You're very sweaty. There's nothing glamorous about being a photographer, except maybe the pictures you produce, and those should be super glamorous. Maybe the third misconception would be that photography is for men. I find that a lot when I was beginning. And no, there's actually a lot of amazingly successful female photographers out there. If you're watching this and you're a successful female photographer, I would love for you to drop a comment below and just say, I'm here, we exist, and I encourage any women who want to be photographers out there. Another really dangerous misconception I've come to realize people have is that, and this is for photographers, sometimes we think that all the money we make is profits, and that's not true. As much as we're artists, you will also be running a business. And so you need to realize that the money you make is, some of it may be going to salaries, some of it may be going to production costs like transport or any props you bought. Some of it is for the government in terms of taxes. Some of the money also goes to the gear that you need to be a photographer. So every time you use your camera, it's depreciating in value because you're kind of wearing away at it. And you need to be saving to buy new gear. So that's a really big expense. So not every shilling you make is yours. A portion of the money you make is yours. The last misconception I usually come across is people thinking photography is easy. I'm sure many of you have had an experience where they're like, but all you're doing is taking a picture. And no, photography is not just taking a picture. You have to edit those pictures, you have to plan for the shoots, you have to find the stylist and the producer. There's a lot of work in photography. It's not as easy as it looks. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was really helpful. This time I really tried to share from my own personal story because I've been there, I know the struggle, and I do really want to help you along in your own journey as a photographer. If you've never visited my channel before, please hit the subscribe button to see videos like this and more every Monday and Thursday. If you're not new here, thank you so much for your continued support and especially for your questions. If you have any more questions, drop them below in the comment section, or you can send them to me on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or my website, www.thandiwemuriu.com, and I will try my best to make future videos that answer the questions you may have. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. I think that's all the questions I can answer right now. So until next time, I will definitely see you guys.